In a situation where there's an hourly fee model, one spouse often hesitates to contact their attorney because they're worried about that cost. And that's where flat fees come in and why we find them to be so powerful. With a flat fee structure, you know the cost for your divorce process up front. When you know what the cost is going to be, your anxiety goes down. And when your anxiety goes down, communication improves. And when the communication improves, conflict tends to decrease. Welcome to the Drama-Free Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, attorney and mediator Cary Jacobson. Each week, we bring you practical guidance, real conversations, and expert insights to help you navigate divorce with clarity, confidence, and less conflict. If you're ready for a calmer, more empowered path forward, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Drama-Free Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, Cary Jacobson, attorney and mediator with Jacobson Family Law. If you're listening today, there's a good chance that divorce is already on your radar. Maybe you're just starting to think about it, or maybe you're already in the thick of it. And you're probably asking yourself some of the same questions that we hear every day. How much is this going to cost? How long is this process going to take? And why does it always feel so overwhelming? Well, today I want to talk to you directly about something that quietly shapes everything in the divorce, but doesn't always get discussed up front. And that's how legal fees work and why the way you pay for your legal support can either reduce conflict or unintentionally make your divorce process harder. One of the biggest stressors of divorce isn't just the emotional side, even though that is always a stressor, but it's also the financial uncertainty. If you've ever worked with an attorney on an hourly basis, you know what that can feel like. The clock is always running. Every email you send, every phone call that you make to your attorney, every follow-up question has a price attached to it. And when you're worried about the bill, that changes how you show up in the process. You may hesitate to ask your attorney questions, even when you may be confused about something. You may delay making decisions because you don't want to rack up attorney's fees. Or you may just stay stuck in conflict because slowing things down often feels expensive. What I see over and over again is this: fear about cost ends up driving behavior, and not in a good way. That fear alone can create more tension, more delay, and more drama than the divorce itself. Now, here's something I really want you to hear because it comes up constantly in real cases. In a situation where there's an hourly fee model, where you're paying your attorney for everything that they do, one spouse often hesitates to contact their attorney because they're worried about that cost. So instead of getting clarity, they sit with that uncertainty, and the process just doesn't move. They don't ask the question, they don't get advice when they need it, and when it comes to negotiating an agreement between you and your spouse, they may push back, not because they disagree, but because they don't feel confident in saying yes because they're not talking to their attorney. Now, from the outside, it could look like resistance or stubbornness, right? You're trying to get your spouse to agree to something, but really what's happening is they're having anxiety about the cost that it's going to take to talk to their attorney. Negotiations work best when both you and your spouse feel informed and supported. But when one spouse is afraid to pick up the phone or to send an email, it slows down the process, and often frustration builds on both sides. Now, that's not because anyone is trying to be difficult. It's just because the fee structure itself can cause friction. And that's where flat fees come in and why we find them to be so powerful. With a flat fee structure, you know the cost for your divorce process up front, whether that's mediation, settlement negotiation, and you can budget realistically about that process. And you're not going to be punished financially for communicating. A flat fee structure encourages you to communicate with your attorney because it allows you to have as many phone calls or as many emails as you need to in order to get the clarity you need to make the important decisions. You don't have to ask yourself, can I afford this question? And you get to ask instead, what is the best decision for my future, my finances, and my kids? And that shift is huge. When you know what the cost is going to be, your anxiety goes down. And when your anxiety goes down, communication improves. And when the communication improves, conflict tends to decrease. Now, flat fees don't just change the how you pay, but it also change how the entire process feels. At Jacobson Family Law, our entire approach is built around helping people divorce with less conflict, more clarity, and greater dignity. Flat fees align with that goal because they encourage problem solving instead of posturing. You're working with your attorney or mediator to come up with a solution instead of posturing with the other side. It removes the incentives attorneys have to drag out the case unnecessarily. And flat fees support mediation, collaboration, and the uncontested resolutions when those paths make sense for your family. Now, when you feel financially safe, you tend to make better decisions. You're less reactive and more open to compromise. And you're more focused on those long-term outcomes and not just short-term wins. That's what a drama-free divorce actually looks like in practice. But I also want to be honest with you. Not every case is fit for a flat fee model. There are some cases that are much more complex. There are going to be some that involve conflict and litigation, and some change in ways that no one can predict at the outset. But even then, having clear phases, defined scope of work, and even transparent pricing makes all the difference. And you deserve to understand what's happening, what's next, and why. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is clarity, and you can make informed decisions instead of reactive ones. One of the most empowering things you can do during your divorce is to stop treating it like an emergency and start treating it like a process. And that means understanding your legal options, knowing which professionals you may need along the way, and creating a realistic financial roadmap of your journey. Flat fees make that planning possible, and the planning reduces panic and anxiety. And when you see the path forward, even if it's uncomfortable, you're less likely to get pulled into unnecessary conflict, especially when you have children involved. So if you're thinking about divorce or you're already in it, here's what I want you to remember. Divorce doesn't have to be chaotic to be effective. It doesn't have to drain you emotionally and financially for you to move forward. And it doesn't have to be driven by fear. A drama-free divorce starts with information, transparency, and intentional choices, including how you choose to pay for your legal support. Thank you for listening to Drama Free Divorce Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who may need reassurance that there is another way to divorce. To learn more about our approach, visit our website at jacobsonfamilylaw.com and join me next week for another honest conversation about navigating divorce with clarity and confidence. Until next time, I'm Cary Jacobson, and remember, how you divorce matters just as much as the outcome. Thanks for listening to the Drama Free Divorce Podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. For more resources or to work with us, visit jacobsonfamilylaw.com. Until next time, stay grounded, stay informed, and stay drama-free.